Wood finishes cover a wide range of territory, so we're going to try to categorize them a bit. Everybody asks me when they see my torsos and my hollow vessels and things like that, they always say, what do I use for finish? What do I use for finish? They think finish is this magic thing that's going to cover up some mistakes or fix some torn out grain or whatever, and it's not. The finish is not the magic. The finish is only going to give you a gloss, a glow to the piece. When I'm asked that question, what do I use for finish? I always go back and I talk about my technique. I'm going to use sharp tools. I'm going to use a shearing cut, not scraping cuts, that will leave the surface behind clean. I'm going to cut with very sharp sandpaper. So I'm cutting, even with my sandpaper. What's sandpaper? Billions and billions of little sharp tools. So I have to use sharp sandpaper and cut the wood fibers cleanly. Once I prepare the wood correctly, then it doesn't matter what we use for finish. We could just put wax on it, we could put polyurethane, varnish, we could put anything on it, lacquer, whatever. So let's break down the categories of finish a minute. I'm going to break them down into 3 categories. On one side of the fence, you've got mineral oil. Mineral oil is an oil. It's always an oil. It'll never cure. People use that for cutting boards and utensil things, but it's not going to leave any polish behind, and it's not going to ever cure. It's going to stay in oil consistency. Over on the other side of the coin, we've got hardened finishes. We've got things like polyurethane, varnish, spray lacquer, anything that's going to leave a hard coating finish is going to cure relatively fast. Within an hour, sometimes a lot less than that. Lacquer is only going to take a few minutes, or a varnish could cure in a half hour or so. But these have hardening agents in it that it's going to cure, and they're designed to put a plastic coating on top of the wood. Okay? I don't particularly like that category of finish because I don't want to have to finish the finish. And if you use a plastic coating finish, you've got to finish the finish. You can't just slop it on and walk away and put it on the shelf and say it's done. You've got to go back. It's going to have dust particles. It's going to have little runs and drips or marks from the surface finish moving as it's drying. And you have to go back and you have to steel wool, and I hate steel wool. I don't want to ever go there. You steel wool it off again, and you put more finish on, and you sand it back off again, or steel wool it back off, and you put more finish on. You got to finish the finish, and it takes many layers and lots of work and lots of trouble to do that. So first reason I don't want to use those finishes is because I don't want to work that hard. I don't want to have to take the time to finish my finish. The second reason is that I don't want to have a plastic coating on my work. What you're seeing when you look at any of my finished products is the wood itself. The only thing that's on top of the wood is actually the wax that results in the final shine, and I can have it matte finish or satin finish or high gloss, whatever, just by the kind of wax that I use to put on the top of the wood. So I don't have a plastic coating on it. That masks the wood. The plastic coatings are preventing you from seeing and feeling and sensing the grain character, and the colors of the wood are masked. You ever see a cloudiness to a wood piece is from the finish that you can't see through to see the true nature of the wood. And you have to be careful with these plastic coating finishes too, because when they say satin or semi-gloss, they put gunk in it to make it not shine. When you look at a can and it says a gloss finish, clear gloss, that means there's no gunk in it. It's the pure finish. And how do they make a satin finish? Is they put really fine particles of dust in there that mask that glossness to knock it down to give you a satin or a semi-gloss finish. So there again, I'm masking, I'm covering up my wood, so I don't like to use those, okay? So what I use is a combination. It's got some oil, it's got some varnish in it that does cure, and it's thinned out, and in this middle category, I'm going to call it a wiping varnish. A good example of a wiping varnish is a Watco Danish. I'm not selling this stuff. It doesn't, I don't have anything invested in it, so there's lots of different wiping varnishes around there. But one of the problems in trying to find a finish that's a wiping varnish is how do you tell what it is? It's not going to tell you on the label. They're not going to tell you their secrets for this X brand of finish, so it's not going to give you a formula. So the way to tell whether you have an oil is to just take a drop on a piece of glass and watch it, and it's oil. And you come back an hour later, it's still oil. You come back a week later, it's still oil. You come back a month later, it's still oil. It's not going to cure, right? You take a varnish or a polyurethane or a lacquer finish of any kind that has a fast curing rate, and you put a dot of that on a piece of glass, and you come back in an hour and you tick, tick, tick. It's a nice polished little round piece of plastic, okay? Now you put a wiping varnish, a drop on a piece of glass, and it's going to cure very, very slowly. So you come back in an hour and it's still soft. You come back in 24 hours and you'll see that it's starting to harden up, and it could be hard depending on how much hardener is in it. But what you're going to see is that little dot of finish is going to shrivel up and look like a little old man. It's going to be wrinkly. Now that's your key to tell you that's going to be a wiping varnish. It's going to be a slow cure. The label is not always going to be an accurate reading of how fast it's going to cure. It could say you could recoat in an hour, recoat in 24 hours. They might give you some hint, but you really don't know until you put that drop on top of a piece of glass. If we can get a close-up right here, you can take a look at this. Some of this is spilled into the top lid of the container. Can you see how wrinkly it is? It's not a polished, shiny, flat surface, okay? So Watco Danish is a wiping varnish, all right? So I'm just going to slop some in a dish here that I use to finish with. And I'm going to saturate a little piece of towel, okay? Fully saturated. I'm going to grab a bowl, just a piece of cherry bowl that I've done, and we're going to slobber it on, right? Slobber it on, inside, outside, all over. You see how the grain character is coming alive. You can see the color in the grain. Just pops when you put the finish on. Okay, so all the way around, all the way around. And just as quickly, don't have to wait. Another minute or two won't hurt, but I don't have to wait. I'm going to take some paper towel and I'm going to wipe it off. Okay, so now there's no finish on top, but the oil penetrated down deep into the wood fibers and protects it. So I've got the protection of a varnish without anything on the surface. All right, and I'll come back and look at this in another hour or two, and I might come back and I'm going to wipe it off some more. Okay, so that it's completely dry. So there's no fingerprints, there's no dust particles, there's nothing on the wood, and it's just the wood showing me its beauty. One safety thing, we want to be careful and not throw the wet oil rags in the bottom of a trash can and then pile stuff on top of it. This is the start of spontaneous combustion. So I'm going to take the rag and put it down here, and I'm just going to roll it over the edge and clean up my mess here with all of the other rags that I've used, either paper towels or rags, it doesn't matter, okay? And then I'm going to roll that out and put it over the edge, so now that can dry and cure. Once it's dry and cured, then it's not going to cause a fire.